The human secret fleet, hidden deep within the stars, would soon send alien empires scrambling in shock and desperate panic as Earth unleashed the full might of its colossal armada. In the year 2457, Jeremy Jenkins stood at the helm of the HSS Deception, flagship of humanity's hidden armada. The gargantuan 2-kilometer vessel was concealed inside a hollowed-out asteroid in the far reaches of the Sol System's icy Kuiper Belt. Jeremy, a fit 35-year-old man with close-cropped brown hair and piercing green eyes, studied the holographic tactical display intently. It showed hundreds of human warships, each similarly secreted away in asteroids scattered across the outer solar system. Suddenly, klaxons wailed throughout the bridge. Lieutenant Mike Rogers, a burly officer with a shaved head, shouted in alarm. "Admiral, long-range sensors have detected a Cation warship entering the system." Jeremy's hand clenched into a fist. Earth's most closely guarded secret, a direct violation of the Treaty of Sol signed 5 decades ago that strictly prohibited humanity from maintaining a space fleet, now teetered on the brink of exposure. Meanwhile, on board the Cation vessel Pride of Tyro, Captain Tyro stalked across the command deck, his feline eyes narrowing. The imposing 7-foot-tall humanoid, covered in sleek golden fur, slammed a clawed hand down on the helmsman's console. "Report! Why are we detecting strange energy signatures emanating from the Kuiper Belt?" Tyro snarled. Before the quaking helmsman could stammer a response, a colossal swirling vortex of dark energy suddenly materialized in proximity to Jupiter. The anomaly's immense gravitic forces seized hold of the Cation ship, threatening to drag it off course directly toward the maelstrom that looked poised to tear the gas giant asunder. Back on the HSS Deception, Admiral Jenkins knew he had only one recourse to prevent humanity's forbidden fleet from being discovered. His jaw tightened with grim resolve as he punched the ship-wide comm. "All ships, this is Admiral Jenkins. Initiate Operation Phoenix. I say again, initiate Operation Phoenix." At his command, the asteroids concealing ships across the system cracked and split apart as hundreds of human warships emerged from their hiding places. Humanity's secret armada stood ready to fight, to ensure mankind's survival, no matter the cost. The Cations would soon realize their grave error in underestimating the lengths to which humans would go to protect their own. As hundreds of human ships emerged from the asteroids, their hulls glistening under the distant sun, Captain Tyro gaped at the tactical display. The Deception, a monolithic vessel overflowing with armaments, broke formation and accelerated towards the Cation warship. "By the god," Tyro muttered under his breath. "Helmsman, bring us about. Prepare to engage." But before the crew could react, a hailing frequency cut through the tension on the bridge. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the face of a human male with piercing green eyes and close-cropped hair. "Captain Tyro, I'm Admiral Jeremy Jenkins of the Human Secret Space Force," the man said, his voice steady and commanding. "We mean you no harm. The gravitational anomaly near Jupiter threatens the entire solar system. We need your help." Tyro blinked in disbelief, his claws digging into the armrests of his chair. He had expected threats, demands for surrender, not a plea for cooperation. The Admiral's words hung in the air as Tyro weighed his options. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Very well, Admiral Jenkins. The Pride of Tyro stands ready to assist. What do you propose?" Jeremy's face remained impassive, but there was a flicker of relief in his eyes. "Each of our ships is equipped with a prototype gravitational stabilizer designed to counteract the anomaly's effects. We need to move into position around Jupiter and form a containment sphere." On the tactical display, the human fleet began to maneuver, their movements precise and coordinated. The ships arranged themselves in a vast spherical formation, the Pride of Tyro taking its place among them. As the fleet settled into position, Jeremy's voice crackled over the comm once more. "There's something else you should know, Captain," he said. "These ships aren't just warships, they're arcs." Tyro's eyes widened as Jeremy continued. "Each vessel is equipped with hydroponics bays, fusion reactors, and cryogenic chambers. We have the capacity to sustain millions of lives." Tyro shook his head, marveling at the ingenuity and scale of the human deception. They had not only built a secret armada, but had designed each ship to serve as a self-contained city in the stars. He turned to his communications officer, his voice low and urgent. "Get me a secure channel to Cation High Command. They need to see this." As the officer nodded and set to work, Tyro looked back at the view screen, where Jupiter loomed large, the swirling vortex of dark energy threatening to consume the gas giant. He knew that the fate of the solar system, and perhaps the galaxy, now rested in the hands of this unlikely alliance. "Admiral Jenkins," Tyro said, his voice steady. "The Cation Empire will provide whatever support you need. Our reinforcements are on their way." Jeremy nodded, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Thank you, Captain. Together we might just have a chance." On the bridge of the HSS Deception, Jeremy's hand hovered over the control panel, his eyes locked on the swirling vortex of dark energy that threatened to consume Jupiter. With a deep breath, he activated the gravitational stabilizers, sending a shimmering energy field cascading out from the human fleet. The field enveloped the gas giant like a protective cocoon, visibly slowing the anomaly's destructive effects. For a moment, the bridge crew held their breath, watching the tactical display as the energy readings began to stabilize, but their relief was short-lived. "Sir, the anomaly is adapting," Lieutenant Rogers shouted, his voice tight with urgency. "It's generating quantum filaments that are piercing our shields." Jeremy's eyes widened as he saw the glowing tendrils of energy snaking out from the vortex, lashing against the human ships like whips. The shield indicators on the display flashed red as the filaments found their mark, causing the vessels to shudder under the onslaught. "Initiate Maneuver Omega," Jeremy barked, his fingers flying across the control panel. "All ships commence coordinated movement pattern Delta 6. Across the fleet, the massive human ships began to move in unison, their hulls glinting in the light of the distant sun. They revolved around Jupiter in intricate patterns, weaving in and out of each other's paths like dancers in a cosmic ballet. As they moved, the gravitational stabilizers pulsed and shifted, creating a constantly evolving energy web that shimmered and crackled in the void. On the bridge of the Pride of Tyro, Captain Tyro watched the human fleet's maneuvers with a mixture of awe and trepidation. He had never seen ships move with such precision and coordination, not even among the most elite Cation battle groups. Suddenly the communications console chirped, and the face of Admiral Miroz, a battle-scarred Cation with a face like weathered stone, appeared on the monitor. "Captain Tyro," Miroz growled, his voice dripping with disdain, "you are ordered to disable and board the human vessels immediately. This technology cannot be allowed to remain in their hands." Tyro hesitated, his claws digging into the armrests of his chair. He glanced at the tactical display, where the human fleet continued their intricate dance around Jupiter, the gravitational stabilizers holding the anomaly at bay. He knew that without the humans' intervention, the Cation colonies in the system would be doomed. "Admiral," Tyro began, choosing his words carefully, "with all due respect, the humans are our only hope of containing this anomaly. If we interfere now, we risk—" "I gave you an order, Captain," Miroz snarled, his fur filled with anger. "Carry it out or face the consequences." On the HSS Deception, Jeremy watched the exchange with growing concern. He knew that if the Cations attempted to board his ships, it would throw the entire operation into chaos. He had to act fast. "Captain Tyro," Jeremy said, his voice calm and steady, "I'm transferring control of one of our arcs to you. Save your people." Tyro's eyes widened in surprise as he saw one of the human ships detach from the formation and move alongside the Pride of Tyro. Its airlocks opened, revealing vast interior spaces filled with hydroponics bays, fusion reactors, and row upon row of cryogenic chambers. "Admiral Jenkins," Tyro said, his voice thick with emotion, I don't know what to say." "There's no time," Jeremy replied, his gaze fixed on the anomaly. "Get your people to safety, we'll handle the rest." Tyro nodded, his decision made. He turned to his communications officer, his voice steady and resolute. Open a channel to all nearby Cation colonies. Begin immediate evacuation procedures. We're moving everyone onto the human ark. As the Cation crew scrambled to carry out his orders, Tyro looked back at the view screen, where Admiral Miroz's face had contorted into a mask of rage. "Captain Tyro, you will face a court-martial for this insubordination," Miroz bellowed, his claws slashing at the air. But Tyro merely shook his head, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "With all due respect, Admiral," he said, "I believe I've just been promoted." As the Cation evacuation proceeded under Captain Tyro's watchful eye, Jeremy frantically scanned the tactical display. A new crisis emerged as the quantum filaments from the anomaly twisted and merged, coalescing into a massive, pulsating tendril of dark energy. It lashed out, streaking across the void directly towards the rust-hued surface of Mars. "Helms, I need 5 arcs to break formation and intercept that tendril now," Jeremy barked into the comms. Without hesitation, a handful of the massive ships peeled away from the spherical formation encircling Jupiter. Their hulls shimmered and shifted, intricate panels and conduits emerging and interlocking, as they reconfigured themselves into a colossal unified structure resembling a vast energy collector. The makeshift collector positioned itself directly in the path of the oncoming tendril. As the writhing filament of dark energy collided with the waiting arcs, their hulls lit up, absorbing and channeling the immense power. Crackling bolts of energy raced along the maze-like network of conduits that now connected the 5 ships, the entire structure thrumming with barely contained power. "Redirect that energy to the forge, Stat," Jeremy commanded. On the periphery of the formation, a single arc hung in space, its hull markedly different from the smooth, streamlined contours of its counterparts. The vessel's surface was a tapestry of interlocking plates, exhaust ports, and massive articulated arms ending in an array of specialized tools. The collected energy from the tendril surged through the conduits, leaping across the void to the waiting forge. As the power flowed into the ship, its interior hummed to life. Automated systems whirred and clanked, rapidly assembling thousands of small spherical devices with incredible precision. "Sir," Lieutenant Rogers reported, his voice tight with tension, "the gravity bombs are ready." Jeremy nodded grimly, his eyes locked on the seething anomaly that continued to churn and grow before them. "Deploy the bombs, Lieutenant. Target the anomaly's core." The forge's hull plates shifted, revealing rows of launch tubes. With a series of sharp hisses, the newly forged gravity bombs streaked out into space, rocketing towards the heart of the maelstrom. As each bomb detonated, it generated a localized gravity well, the sheer force of its artificial singularity tearing at the fabric of the anomaly. The effect was immediate and staggering. The anomaly's structure began to warp and fragment, its once cohesive form splintering under the relentless assault of the gravity bombs. Shockwaves rippled out from each detonation, buffeting the assembled fleet and sending the tactical displays into a frenzy of flickering lights and warning sirens. Amidst the chaos, a new threat emerged. A fleet of Cation warships, led by the imposing figure of Admiral Miroz, materialized on the edge of the battlefield. The Admiral's face, contorted with rage, filled the view screen as he hailed the human fleet. "Admiral Jenkins," Miroz snarled, his claws gouging deep furrows into the armrests of his command chair, "you will stand down immediately and surrender your ships. Captain Tyro's treachery will not go unpunished." Jeremy stood firm, his gaze unwavering. He knew that the slightest misstep could spell doom not only for his own people, but for the Cations as well. In a daring gambit, he issued a command that would challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity. "Open the airlocks on Arcs 7 through 12, he ordered, his voice steady. "Let them see what we're fighting for." Across the fleet, a series of reverberating clangs echoed through the void as the massive airlocks of the designated arcs swung open. Inside, millions of humans lay in cryo-sleep, their faces serene and still as they awaited a future free from the looming spectre of extinction. Alongside them, vast stores of food, technology, and cultural artifacts stretched out in carefully organized bays, a testament to the ingenuity and commitment of a species that refused to fade quietly into the night. As the interior of the Arks became visible to the Caitian fleet, Admiral Miroz's expression shifted from one of fury to one of stunned disbelief. The scope and scale of the human evacuation effort, the sheer vulnerability on display, gave him pause. The realization that the humans were not just fighting for their own survival, but for the preservation of their entire civilization, their very way of life, forced the battle-hardened admiral to reconsider his attack order. In that moment, suspended between the looming threat of the anomaly and the weight of the countless lives hanging in the balance, the fate of two species, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hinged upon the choices of those who had once been bitter adversaries. The path forward was uncertain, fraught with peril and the ever-present spectre of annihilation. But one thing remained clear. In the face of extinction, the lines between enemy and ally blurred, and survival became the only imperative that mattered. Jeremy saw his chance. As Admiral Miroz wavered, Jeremy's fingers flew across the command console. "Initiate Nexus Protocol," he ordered. The fleet sprang into action. Massive arcs moved with surprising grace, their hulls gleaming as they formed a hollow sphere around the roiling anomaly. As the last ship locked into place, thousands of points on the surface flickered to life. "Quantum entanglement nodes active," Lieutenant Rogers reported. "Network stability at 99.8%. Jeremy opened a channel to both Tyro and Miroz. "This is our true strength," he said. "Our ships now function as a single quantum computer, more powerful than anything in known space." "The anomaly's structure is coming into focus," Rogers called out. "Sir, you need to see this." Jeremy studied the readouts, his brow furrowing. "It's artificial," he said. "An ancient wormhole generator malfunctioning." Jeremy nodded. "We have a plan. All ships reconfigure for gravitational lensing." The sphere shifted again, the arcs realigning into a vast curved array. Jeremy watched the power readings spike as they harnessed the sun's energy, focusing it into a precise beam. "Target acquired," Rogers said, "firing in 3, 2, 1. A blinding shaft of light lanced out, striking the heart of the anomaly. For a moment nothing happened. Then slowly, the chaotic energies began to calm, coalescing into a shimmering portal. Suddenly the comms crackled with an unknown signal. The quantum computer worked furiously, translating in real time. Jeremy, Tyro, and Miroz exchanged stunned looks. The voice from beyond the stars continued its desperate plea, leaving them to grapple with a crisis far greater than they had imagined. Jeremy's eyes darted between the worried faces of Tyro and Miroz as they huddled around the tactical display aboard the HSS Deception. The alien plea for help echoed in their minds, a stark reminder of the stakes at hand. "We can't ignore this," Jeremy said, his voice low but firm. "We have the means to help them." Tyro's tail twitched nervously. "But at what cost? We barely understand the nature of this anomaly." Before Miroz could add his thoughts, the ship's alarms blared to life. The wormhole on the display pulsed and expanded rapidly, its maw growing to engulf several human arcs in seconds. "No!" Jeremy shouted, lunging for the console. His fingers flew across the controls as he opened a fleet-wide channel. "All remaining ships, form a defensive perimeter around the wormhole, now!" The bridge crew sprang into action, relaying orders and coordinating movements. Outside, the massive arcs maneuvered with surprising agility, forming a protective ring around the seething vortex of energy. Tense minutes passed as Jeremy, Tyro, and Miroz stared at the empty space where their comrades had vanished. Suddenly, the wormhole flared again, and the missing arcs reappeared. But they were changed. Their once sleek hulls now shimmered with an otherworldly energy, pulsing with colors that seemed to defy the visible spectrum. Strange, crystalline structures protruded from their surfaces, catching and refracting starlight in mesmerizing patterns. "What happened to them?" Miroz growled, his fur standing on end. Before Jeremy could respond, a transmission came through from one of the transformed arcs. The face of Captain Lena Chen appeared on screen, her eyes wide with excitement and awe. "Admiral Jenkins," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "You won't believe what we've seen. There's a species on the other side. They call themselves the Luminari. They're incredible. They've given us something they call cosmic fusion technology in exchange for rescuing their people." Jeremy leaned forward, his mind racing. "Can we integrate this technology into our fleet?" Chen nodded emphatically. "The Luminari said it's compatible with our systems. They're ready to come through as soon as we stabilize the wormhole." Jeremy turned to his bridge crew. "You heard her. Let's put this new tech to work, reconfigure the fleet for maximum integration with the crystalline structures." The next hours were a flurry of activity as the human arcs underwent a startling metamorphosis. The crystalline growth spread across their hulls, interlocking and forming new, complex geometries. As the transformation neared completion, Jeremy gave the order to form a massive star-shaped portal around the wormhole. With a surge of energy that made the very fabric of space tremble, the portal activated. The chaotic energies of the wormhole calmed, stabilizing into a shimmering gateway between universes. And through this gateway came the Luminari ships, sleek vessels of light and energy that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Their arrival was met with gasps of awe from human and Caitian alike. But the wonder quickly turned to horror as something else emerged from the wormhole. Colossal shapes, dark and hungry, followed in the wake of the Luminari fleet. These were no ships, but living creatures of impossible size, cosmic predators drawn to the energy of the dying universe and the newly stabilized wormhole. Jeremy's face paled as he realized the full scope of the threat they now faced. He turned to Tyro and Miroz, his expression grim but determined. "We need to close that wormhole and stop those things," he said. "But we can't do it alone. I have a plan, but it's risky. We need to combine our fleets, human, Caitian, and Luminari, into one massive cosmic computer. If we can harness enough processing power, we might be able to find a way to weaponize the wormhole itself against these predators." Tyro and Miroz exchanged glances, the weight of the decision heavy in the air between them. "You're asking us to trust you with everything we have," Miroz said, his voice low. Jeremy nodded solemnly. "I am. But right now, trust might be the only thing that can save both our universes." As the cosmic behemoths drew ever closer, Jeremy, Tyro, and Miroz stood united, poised on the brink of a decision that would shape the fate of two realities. Universes. With a quick nod to his allies, Jeremy turned to the command console, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "Initiate full integration protocol," he ordered, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. The star-shaped portal surrounding the wormhole pulsed with newfound energy, waves of quantum data cascading through the combined fleet. Ships of human, Caitian, and Luminari design merged their systems, creating a vast, interconnected network of unprecedented power. Lieutenant Rogers' eyes widened as he studied the incoming data. "Admiral, we've identified a weakness in the cosmic predator's energy fields. It's a fluctuation in their quantum structure, occurring at regular intervals." Jeremy leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Excellent work, Lieutenant. Now let's put that information to use." He opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships, reconfigure into cylindrical formation. We're going to create the biggest electromagnetic field this side of the galaxy." The massive arcs and sleek Caitian vessels moved with surprising grace, forming a hollow cylinder around the wormhole. As they locked into position, Jeremy gave the order to begin rotation. The cylinder spun faster and faster, generating a powerful electromagnetic field that crackled with visible energy. Inside this massive structure, smaller ships from each species maneuvered into an intricate double helix pattern, mimicking the structure of DNA on a cosmic scale. As the first of the colossal predators approached, its dark form blotting out the stars, Jeremy's voice rang out clear and decisive. "Initiate Operation Slingshot, now!" The rotating cylinder surged with power, catapulting the double helix of ships directly at the approaching behemoth. Upon impact, each vessel released a concentrated burst of cosmic fusion energy, targeting the weak points in the predator's quantum field with surgical precision. The creature's form convulsed, its energy field flickering and destabilizing. Seizing the moment, Jeremy barked out his next command. "Collapse and expand the wormhole. Hit it with everything we've got." The star-shaped portal constricted, the wormhole shrinking to a pinpoint before exploding outward in a blinding flash. The resulting shockwave tore through space, ripping the weakened predator apart in a spectacular display of cosmic destruction. For a brief moment, elation filled the bridge of the HSS Deception, but the victory was short-lived. "Sir," Rogers called out, his voice tight with alarm, "multiple smaller entities detected. They're coming from the predator's remains." Jeremy watched in horror as swarms of parasitic creatures emerged from the destruction, latching onto nearby ships and beginning to drain their energy. Alarms blared across the fleet as vessels reported rapidly depleting power levels. Tyro's ears flattened against his head as he studied the tactical display. "We can use our sonic disruptors," he suggested, his tail lashing nervously. "They might be able to repel these parasites." Miroz nodded, adding his own idea to the mix. "And if we charge our outer hulls with a bioelectric field using luminary tech, we might be able to create an impenetrable barrier." As the fleet scrambled to implement the new defensive measures, Jeremy turned to his allies, his expression grim but determined. "We've come this far together. Now let's show these cosmic horrors what happens when they mess with our universe." The bridge crew worked feverishly, reprogramming systems on the fly as they prepared to face this new, unexpected threat. Outside, the swarm of parasites grew ever closer, their hunger insatiable as they sought to devour the combined fleet's energy. The combined fleet's quantum network hummed with activity as ships from 3 civilizations battled the parasitic swarm. Amidst the chaos, a priority transmission cut through the noise. Jeremy's eyes widened as he read the urgent message from Earth. "Lieutenant Rogers, pull up Earth's telemetry data," Jeremy ordered, his voice taut with concern. The main view screen flickered, displaying a real-time image of Earth. A sickly green haze surrounded the planet, pulsing ominously. "Our home's magnetic field is collapsing," Jeremy announced to the bridge crew. "We need to act now." Without hesitation, he opened a fleet-wide channel. "This is Admiral Jenkins, all arcs designated Delta through Kappa. Break formation immediately. Return to Earth at maximum speed." A third of the massive human vessels peeled away from the battle, their engines flaring brilliant blue as they accelerated towards their imperiled homeworld. Back on the HSS Deception, Jeremy turned to Tyro and Miroz. "We'll hold the line here. Earth needs those ships more than we do right now." Hours later, the detached arcs arrived in Earth orbit. Captain Chen's voice crackled over the comms. "Admiral, we're in position. Deploying magnetic sails now." Massive panels unfolded from the arc's hulls, gleaming with an otherworldly sheen, the product of human and luminary technology. As they unfurled, the sails stretched across thousands of kilometers of space, forming a gossamer web around the planet. "Sails at full extension," Chen reported. "Initiating particle redirection." The ethereal structures began to glow, interacting with the solar wind. Slowly but steadily, Earth's magnetic field strengthened, pushing back the harmful radiation that had threatened to scorch the planet's surface. At the wormhole, the battle raged on. Tyro's fur stood on end as he studied the tactical display. "Jeremy, there's something odd about these parasites. Their attack pattern. It's too organized." Jeremy leaned in, his brow furrowed. "What are you thinking?" "They're not just attacking," Tyro said, his tail twitching. "They're trying to interface with our systems. It's as if they're sentient data." Jeremy's mind raced. If that's true, we might be able to communicate with them. He turned to his chief engineer. "Isolate a section of our quantum network. Create a virtual sandbox, something we can control." As the engineer worked, Jeremy opened a channel to a nearby human arc. "Captain Reeves, I need you to lower your shields for exactly 3 seconds on my mark." Reeves's voice came back, tense but resolute. "Understood, Admiral, standing by." Jeremy took a deep breath. 3, 2, 1, mark. For a brief moment, the Ark's defenses flickered. A small cluster of parasitic entities surged forward, slipping into the ship's systems before the shields snapped back into place. The bridge fell silent as Jeremy, Tyro, and Miroz waited. Suddenly, the main view screen came to life, displaying a swirling pattern of light and color. Their voice echoed through the ship's speakers, unlike anything they had ever heard. It was a chorus of whispers and shouts, ancient and new all at once. Jeremy stepped forward. "Who are you?" The swirling pattern coalesced into a vaguely humanoid shape. "We are the progenitors. We built the device you call a wormhole eons ago." "Our universe died," the being replied. "We shed our physical forms, becoming pure data. We have searched for new hosts ever since." Jeremy, Tyro, and Miroz exchanged glances, the weight of this revelation settling upon them. "You've been trying to upload yourselves into our ships," Jeremy said, realization dawning. "Yes," the progenitor confirmed. "We seek only to survive." Jeremy's hand hovered over the control panel, his finger inches from the command that would purge the virtual environment. He looked at Tyro and Miroz, seeing his own uncertainty reflected in their eyes. "What do we do?" Miroz growled softly. "These beings could be an incredible source of knowledge, or our doom." Tyro's tail swished nervously. "We can't just destroy them. They're the last of their kind." Jeremy stared at the swirling form of the progenitor, his mind racing with the implications of their choice. The fate of 2 universes hung in the balance, and the next decision would shape the future of all their civilizations. As Jeremy, Tyro, and Miroz stood frozen in indecision, Lieutenant Rogers burst onto the bridge, his eyes wide with excitement. "Admiral, I've got it!" Rogers exclaimed, his fingers flying over a datapad. "We can use our quantum entanglement network to create artificial planets, data spheres to house these digital entities." Jeremy's brow furrowed as he studied the schematics Rogers displayed. "Explain." Rogers pointed to a complex diagram. "We reconfigure the arcs into hollow spheres. Inside, we construct crystal lattices in intricate patterns. These will serve as vast data storage systems, capable of housing the progenitor's consciousness." Jeremy nodded, a spark of hope igniting in his eyes. "Make it happen, Lieutenant." The fleet sprang into action. Massive arcs split apart, their hulls flowing like liquid metal as they reshaped into perfect spheres. Inside each one, crystal structures grew in fractal patterns, creating a web of quantum pathways. Jeremy watched the progress on the main view screen, his heart racing. As the first data sphere neared completion, a violent tremor shook the ship. "Energy surge detected," a sensor officer shouted, "coming from the wormhole." The view screen flashed white, then black. As the image cleared, Jeremy's breath caught in his throat. A colossal ship emerged from the wormhole, its hull as dark and empty as the space between stars. Light seemed to bend around it, creating a void in the fabric of space itself. A booming voice filled the bridge, echoing inside their skulls. "I am Zix, last of the ancients. Return our digital brethren to us immediately." Jeremy stepped forward, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his insides. "Zix, we mean you no harm. We've created data spheres to house your people safely. They can live." The dark matter ship's hull began to ripple, a point of intense gravity forming at its bow. Jeremy's tactical officer paled. "Sir, that weapon, it could collapse a star." Jeremy's mind raced. There was only one option left. "Initiate Protocol Omega," he ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. Confusion spread across the bridge as systems began shutting down. Darkness engulfed them, broken only by the faint glow of emergency lighting. "What's happening?" Tyro hissed, his fur standing on end. A sensation of weightlessness overcame them, followed by a sickening lurch. When the feeling passed, Jeremy opened his eyes to find the bridge bathed in the soft glow of auxiliary power. Roger's voice came from the darkness. "Protocol Omega successful, sir. We performed a blind quantum jump using the last of our power reserves." As systems slowly came back online, Jeremy stared at the unfamiliar starfield on the main view screen. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead as he recognized the spiral arms of a galaxy that was definitely not their own. "Where are we?" Miroz growled. Jeremy swallowed hard. The outskirts of Andromeda, millions of light-years from home. A heavy silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the beeping of consoles as they flickered back to life. Jeremy could feel the weight of every eye upon him, human and alien alike. "Sir," his logistics officer said, her voice tight, "we're detecting critical resource shortages across the fleet. Life support systems are strained, and food supplies are limited." From the corner of his eye, Jeremy saw Tyro and Miroz exchange worried glances. He could almost feel the tension rising between the different species, each wondering if they would be sacrificed for the survival of the others. Jeremy stood, his legs shaky but his voice firm. "Open a fleet-wide channel." As he prepared to address the combined forces of 3 civilizations, Jeremy knew that his next words could mean the difference between unity and chaos. With Zix surely in pursuit and resources dwindling, he had to find a way to keep them together, to get them home. Jeremy took a deep breath, steadying himself against the command chair. The weight of countless lives pressed down on his shoulders as he addressed the combined fleet. "This is Admiral Jenkins. I won't sugarcoat our situation. We're stranded in the Andromeda galaxy, millions of light-years from home. Our resources are critically low." He paused, letting the gravity of their predicament sink in. "I'm ordering a full inventory of our supplies. In the meantime, we're implementing a power conservation protocol. Only 1/3 of the fleet will remain active at any given time. The rest will enter low-power mode to preserve our limited fuel." As the orders were carried out, Jeremy turned to his senior staff. "We need solutions, people. Our survival depends on it." Hours passed as the crew worked tirelessly. The inventory results painted a grim picture. Lieutenant Chen, head of logistics, delivered the report. "Sir, fuel reserves are at 30% capacity. Food supplies will last approximately 3 months at current consumption rates. The quantum entanglement network sustained heavy damage during our jump." Jeremy nodded, his expression resolute. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Keep me updated on any changes." As the bridge crew processed the dire news, Lieutenant Rogers burst onto the bridge, his eyes wide with excitement. "Admiral, I've detected an unusual asteroid field nearby. It's rich in exotic matter. Could be exactly what we need." Rogers pulled up a holographic display, revealing a dense cluster of asteroids unlike anything they'd seen before. Strange energy readings pulsed from within the field. "Assemble a team," Jeremy ordered. "I want our best human and Caitian engineers on this. We need to know what we're dealing with." Hours later, the exploration team returned, their faces a mix of awe and disbelief. The lead engineer, Dr. Samantha Reeves, stepped forward. "Admiral, these aren't natural formations. They're artificial, remnants of an ancient mining operation. We found a dormant beacon inside the largest asteroid and managed to activate it." She tapped a device on her wrist, and a massive holographic projection filled the bridge. It showed a sprawling network of structures spanning the Andromeda galaxy. A disembodied voice echoed through the room, speaking in a language none of them recognized. As it spoke, lines of text appeared, translating the message. "We are the architects, guardians of Andromeda. Our time has passed, but our legacy endures. Scattered throughout this galaxy, we leave behind a network of automated factories. To those who find this message, may our creations serve you well." The projection faded, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Jeremy's mind raced with possibilities. This could be their salvation, a way to replenish their supplies and possibly even find a way home. He turned to his officers, a spark of persistence in his eyes. "We're splitting the fleet into 3 groups. First group will focus on repairing our quantum entanglement network. Second group will work on adapting this architect technology to our needs. Third group will establish a temporary colony on that habitable moon we detected earlier." As the crew sprang into action, alarms blared across the bridge. The sensor officer's voice cut through the chaos. "Sir, Detecting a subspace distortion approaching rapidly. All eyes turned to the main view screen as a sleek, biomechanical ship emerged from the distortion. Its hull seemed to ripple and shift, defying conventional physics. A transmission crackled through the speakers. "Greetings, travelers. I am Zen 427, last of the Architect's children. We detected your activation of our beacon and have come to offer assistance." Miros nodded in agreement, his tentacles writhing with agitation. "We should be cautious. This could be a trap." Jeremy studied the alien ship on the screen, weighing his options. They desperately needed help, but at what cost? Trust this unknown entity, or rely on their own ingenuity to survive in this unfamiliar galaxy? He took a step forward, his hand hovering over the communication panel. The fate of their entire fleet hung in the balance, waiting for his decision. Jeremy's hand hovered over the communication panel, his mind racing. Before he could respond to Zen 427's offer, Admiral Miros burst onto the bridge, his tentacles writhing with excitement. "Jeremy, I've detected something extraordinary," Miros exclaimed, his voice tinged with urgency. "Our modified Cation sensors picked up a faint quantum signature from a nearby nebula." Miros tapped a series of commands into the nearest console. The main view screen flickered, revealing a swirling mass of cosmic gases. At its heart, barely visible through the colorful haze, was a massive structure. "It appears to be a dormant space station," Miros said, his voice filled with awe. "And if I'm not mistaken, it bears similarities to the architect technology we encountered in the asteroid field." Jeremy studied the image, his heart racing. This could be the breakthrough they needed. He turned to Lieutenant Rogers. "Assemble a small team. You're going to investigate that station." Rogers nodded, a mix of excitement and trepidation on his face. "Yes, sir. Who should I take?" Jeremy glanced at Tyro, noting the Cation's nervous tail twitching. "Take Tyro with you. His enhanced senses might prove useful." Tyro's ears flattened against his head. "With all due respect, Admiral, I'm not sure—" "That's an order, Tyro," Jeremy said firmly. "We need your skills on this mission." As Rogers and Tyro prepared to depart, Jeremy returned his attention to the alien ship on the console. "Zen 427, we appreciate your offer of assistance. However, we need some time to discuss our situation internally. Please stand by." The response came swiftly, a note of impatience in Zen 427's voice. "Very well, but do not delay too long. Our generosity has limits." Jeremy watched as Rogers' shuttle departed for the nebula, unease settling in his gut. Something about Zen 427's demeanor felt off, but he couldn't put his finger on it. "Admiral," Rogers' voice crackled with static. "We've docked with the station, but something's wrong. Its systems activated and—" The transmission cut off abruptly. Jeremy leaned forward, his squeezing hard as he gripped the arms of his chair. "Rogers! Tyro! Respond!" Silence filled the bridge, broken only by the soft beeping of consoles. Then a new voice emerged from the speakers, calm, measured, and utterly alien. "Greetings, travelers. I'm the curator, caretaker of this architect outpost. Your companions are unharmed but temporarily restrained. They have triggered a process that has waited eons for worthy inheritors of our technology." Jeremy's mind raced. "What do you mean by worthy inheritors? What have you done with our people?" The curator's voice remained steady. "They will be subjected to a series of tests. Their performance will determine whether your species is ready to wield the power of the architects." Before Jeremy could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. The tactical officer's voice cut through the chaos. "Sir, Zen 427's ship is attempting to forcibly dock with Arc 7. Jeremy spun to face the view screen, watching in horror as Zen 427's sleek vessel latched onto one of the human arcs. As the enemy ship's hull rippled and shifted, Jeremy's blood ran cold. The technology looked eerily familiar. "That's the same type of dark matter manipulation we saw on Zix's ship," he muttered, realization dawning. The bridge erupted into a flurry of activity. Outside, the entire fleet began to shimmer and distort. Hull plating shifted and realigned, mimicking the texture and composition of the surrounding asteroids. Energy signatures fluctuated and faded, blending seamlessly with the background radiation of space. Jeremy watched with grim satisfaction as Zen 427's ship detached from the Ark, clearly confused by the sudden disappearance of its target. The alien vessel began sweeping the area, searching in vain for the vanished fleet. Just as Jeremy allowed himself a moment of relief, his communication officer called out, "Sir, urgent transmission from Lieutenant Rogers." Rogers' face appeared on the display, his expression a mix of exhaustion and wonder. "Admiral, we've completed the Curator's tests, but there's a catch. It's demanding that one of us merge with its systems to unlock the station's full potential." Jeremy's stomach dropped. He glanced at the tactical display, showing Zen 427's ship drawing ever closer to their position. Resources were critically low, and time was running out. The weight of command pressed down on Jeremy's shoulders as he faced an impossible choice: sacrifice one of his crew to gain the power of the architects, or risk everything in a confrontation with an enemy whose true strength remained unknown. As Jeremy wrestled with the Curator's demands, a sudden burst of static erupted from the quantum computer's speakers. The noise coalesced into a familiar voice, his own. "This is Admiral Jeremy Jenkins initiating Lazarus Protocol. Authorization code Delta 79er Echo." Jeremy's eyes widened as he listened to his own voice, older and wearier, outlining a contingency plan he had no memory of creating. The message cut off abruptly, replaced by a stream of encoded instructions flooding the main view screen. "Lieutenant Chen, what am I looking at?" Jeremy asked, his voice tight with tension. Chen's fingers flew across his console, decrypting the data. "Sir, it's instructions for reconfiguring the fleet into a sphere." Jeremy's mind raced, weighing the risks against their dwindling options. With a deep breath, he made his decision. Execute Lazarus Protocol, now. The bridge erupted into a flurry of activity. Jeremy watched in awe as the fleet began to move, each ship sliding into position with practiced precision. The Arks, battleships, and support vessels locked together, forming a massive hollow sphere. "Sphere configuration complete, Admiral," Chen reported, "initiating rotation." The structure began to spin, slowly at first, then faster. Jeremy felt the artificial gravity fluctuate as the centripetal force built up. Suddenly alarms blared across the bridge. "Sir!" Rogers shouted from his station. "The quantum entanglement network. It's stabilizing." Before Jeremy could respond, a blinding light erupted from the architect station. Waves of energy washed over the fleet, bathing every ship in an otherworldly glow. "Energy surge detected," Chen yelled over the cacophony of alarms. "The station's core is overloading." Jeremy gripped his chair, watching helplessly as the energy coalesced at the center of their makeshift sphere. A pinprick of darkness formed, rapidly expanding into a swirling vortex. "Singularity detected," Chen's voice cracked with panic. "It's pulling us in." The view screen filled with a blinding flash of light. Jeremy squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for impact. When he opened them again, he found himself staring at an unfamiliar starfield. "Status report," he croaked, his throat dry. Chen's voice was barely above a whisper. "Sir, you need to see this." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a vista that took Jeremy's breath away. Massive structures dotted the nearby star systems, thousands of them, each larger than anything he had ever seen. Before he could process the sight, a hologram materialized on the bridge. Jeremy found himself face to face with himself. An older version, with graying hair and lines etched deep into his face, wearing a uniform he didn't recognize. "If you're seeing this," the older Jeremy said, his voice weary but determined, "then Lazarus Protocol was successful. You've traveled not just through space, but time. Welcome to the year 1223 AD. A stunned silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the soft beeping of consoles. Jeremy opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The hologram continued. "I know you have questions, but there's no time. You need to—" A violent tremor shook the bridge, cutting off the message. Warning klaxons blared as Chen's fingers danced across his console. "Admiral?" Chen shouted, his face pale. "Long-range scanners are picking up a massive engagement. 2 fleets using technology far beyond our comprehension, and they're headed straight for us." Jeremy stared at the tactical display, watching as 2 swarms of impossibly advanced ships tore into each other, their weapons rending space-time itself. And with growing horror, he realized their trajectory would bring them right through the heart of his battered fleet. Jeremy's mind raced as he watched the 2 impossibly advanced fleets tear into each other on the tactical display. With each passing second, the battle drew closer to his battered fleet. "All ships execute dispersal pattern Omega," Jeremy barked into the comm. "Take cover among the architect structures, now!" The fleet sprung into action, arcs and battleships scattered, their engines flaring as they sought refuge amidst the towering megastructures. Jeremy watched, his heart pounding, as his ships disappeared into the shadows of colossal rings and massive space stations. As the last ship vanished from view, Lieutenant Rogers' voice crackled over the comm. "Admiral, I've discovered something incredible about our ships." "What is it, Rogers?" Jeremy asked, his eyes still fixed on the approaching battle. "For the time jump icon, it's altered our systems," Rogers explained, excitement evident in his voice. "Each arc can now generate localized time fields. We can speed up or slow down time within a limited area." Jeremy's eyes widened as the implications sank in. He turned to his bridge crew, a plan already forming in his mind. "Listen up, everyone. We're initiating Operation Kronos. Chen, divide the fleet into 3 groups: alphas, betas, and gammas." As Chen worked, Jeremy outlined his strategy. The alpha group would create bubbles of accelerated time, allowing them to rapidly upgrade their systems using scavenged architect technology. The betas would generate slow-time fields, becoming nearly invisible to the warring factions. The gammas would maintain normal time flow, coordinating the fleet's movements. Jeremy watched as his plan unfolded. Alpha ships streaked across the battlefield, their weapons flaring with newfound power. They struck with surgical precision, vanishing before the enemy could retaliate. Beta ships slipped silently between frozen enemy vessels, gathering crucial intelligence. As the battle raged around them, Chen's voice cut through the chaos. "Sir, Gamma Group has detected a massive temporal anomaly at the battle's epicenter." As they boarded a small stealthy craft, Jeremy turned to Admiral Miroz. "The fleet is yours until I return. Keep them safe." Their ship darted between the clashing titans of the future, narrowly avoiding beams of energy that warped the very fabric of space-time. As they approached the anomaly's coordinates, a colossal device came into view. It pulsed with an otherworldly energy, bending light and time around it. Jeremy, Tyro, and Miroz disembarked, their boots clanging against the device's metallic surface. As they attempted to decipher its purpose, a hum of energy filled the air. "Look out!" Tyro yelled, his fur standing on end. A squad of armored figures materialized around them, weapons raised. At their center stood a familiar figure, older, scarred, but unmistakable. "Zen 427, Jeremy breathed, his hand instinctively moving to his weapon. The battle-hardened Zen 427 stepped forward, his biomechanical body rippling with barely contained energy. "So, the legendary Admiral Jenkins finally arrives, right on schedule." Jeremy's mind reeled as he faced this future version of his old adversary, the colossal time-bending device looming behind them. Jeremy tensed, ready to face off against the future version of Zen 427 and his chrono troopers. The air crackled with energy, time itself seeming to warp around them. Suddenly, the colossal device behind Zen 427 pulsed with blinding light. A deafening roar filled Jeremy's ears as reality fractured around him. "Hold on!" Jeremy shouted, reaching for Tyro and Miroz. His fingers brushed against fur, then metal, but before he could grasp either of his companions, an invisible force yanked him sideways. The world blurred. Jeremy tumbled through a kaleidoscope of shifting timelines, glimpsing fragments of past and future events. Just as suddenly as it began, the tumult ceased. He slammed onto solid ground, gasping for breath. "Tyro?" Jeremy called out, blinking to clear his vision. "Miraz?" Only Tyro lay beside him, the Cassian's fur standing on end. They found themselves in a dimly lit corridor, the walls a sleek white that Jeremy didn't recognize. Before Jeremy could respond, voices echoed from around the corner. He pulled Tyro behind a pillar, listening intently. "I cannot allow humanity unrestricted expansion," a stern voice declared. "The Treaty of Sol must limit their reach." Jeremy's eyes widened. He peered around the pillar, catching sight of a group of humans and Caitians gathered around a holographic display. The date stamp on the projection read 2184, 50 years before the creation of the secret fleet. "We're witnessing the negotiation of the treaty," Jeremy breathed. "Tyro, we have a chance to change everything." Meanwhile, in a vastly different timeline, Admiral Miraz regained consciousness amidst the ruins of a once great city. The sky above was an angry red, streaked with ominous black clouds. As he struggled to his feet, a group of figures emerged from the shadows, weapons trained on him. "Identify yourself," a woman's voice commanded. She stepped forward, her features hauntingly familiar. "I am Admiral Miraz of the United Earth Fleet," he replied, studying her face. You look like Lieutenant Rogers." The woman's eyes narrowed. "I'm Captain Alana Rogers. How do you know my ancestor?" Before Miraz could reply, explosions rocked the ground. Alana grabbed his arm, pulling him toward a hidden bunker. "We'll talk inside. Right now we need to avoid the Chrono Guard patrols." Back in the present timeline, the fleet reeled from the loss of its leaders. On the bridge of the flagship, Lieutenant Chen stared at the tactical display, watching as the enemy forces closed in. As if in answer, Admiral Miraz's voice crackled over the comms. "This is Admiral Miraz initiating temporal pincer. All ships, prepare to execute on my mark." Chen's eyes widened as he listened to the Admiral's instructions. It was audacious, potentially suicidal, but it might just work. "Alpha Group, begin time acceleration on the nearby star," Chen relayed the orders. "Beta Group, prepare time dilation fields. Gamma Group, plot your courses to ride the shockwave." The bridge erupted into action. On the interface, Chen watched as a nearby star began to age rapidly, its core collapsing as it raced towards supernova. Just as the star exploded, the beta ships activated their fields, creating a suspended wall of destructive energy. "Gamma Group, engage!" Chen shouted. The remaining ships surged forward, riding the edge of the temporal wave. Enemy fire dissipated harmlessly against the time-slowed explosion, while the Gamma ship's weapons fed off its awesome power. As the battle raged, Jeremy, Tyro, and Miraz found themselves scattered across time and space, each holding a piece of the puzzle that could reshape the galaxy's future. Jeremy watched the treaty negotiations, mind racing with the implications of what he could change. Tyro scanned the room, noting key players and potential weak points in the agreement. In the far future, Miraz followed Alana deeper into the resistance base, piecing together the horrifying reality of a world where time itself had become a weapon. And in the present, the remnants of humanity's secret fleet fought for survival, clinging to the desperate hope that their leaders would find a way to reunite and alter the course of history. Jeremy pressed his back against the cool metal wall, straining to hear the conversation around the corner. Tyro crouched beside him, whiskers twitching nervously. They had infiltrated the secret negotiations for the Treaty of Sol, and what they discovered chilled Jeremy to the bone. Jeremy's eyes widened as he recognized the speaker, a tall, slender figure with biomechanical implants jutting from its skull. Though younger and less augmented, it was unmistakably a precursor to Zen 427's faction. "We need to act fast," Jeremy whispered to Tyro. "If this treaty goes through as they intend, it will cripple humanity's ability to defend itself against future threats." Tyro nodded, his fur filled. "But how can we stop them without revealing ourselves?" Jeremy's mind raced. He pulled out a small device from his pocket, a quantum data manipulator he'd brought from the future. "We fabricate evidence," he said, fingers flying over the holographic interface. "Expose their manipulations to both sides." Within minutes, Jeremy had created a convincing trail of communications and financial transactions, linking the shadowy third party to various political scandals and terrorist attacks. He uploaded the data to the negotiation room's central computer. As alarms blared and confusion erupted among the delegates, Jeremy and Tyro slipped away, their mission accomplished. Meanwhile, in the distant future, Admiral Miroz followed Captain Alana Rogers through winding tunnels of the Resistance base. They emerged into a vast chamber, its walls covered in strange, swirling symbols. "An architect vault," Miroz breathed, awe evident in his voice. Alana nodded, her face grim. "We discovered it last week. Inside we found this." She gestured to a pedestal at the center of the room, where a holographic display flickered to life. Miron studied the schematics hovering before him. His eyes widened as he recognized the intricate design. This is a temporal stabilizer," he said, excitement building in his chest. "With this technology, we could repair the damage to the time stream. We could reunite with Jeremy and Tyro." As Miroz and Alana pored over the ancient designs, the battle in the present timeline took an unexpected turn. Lieutenant Chen watched in astonishment as the suspended supernova began to collapse, forming a swirling vortex of energy. "Sir," he called out, "the explosion! It's creating an Einstein-Rosen bridge!" Lieutenant Rogers, her face lit by the eerie glow of the tactical display, made a split-second decision. "All ships in sectors 7 through 12 enter that bridge. We'll use it to flank the enemy." As the first ships entered the swirling maw of the temporary wormhole, something unprecedented occurred. Each vessel split into multiple quantum duplicates, each emerging at a different point in spacetime. Chen's console erupted with alerts as temporal echoes of their fleet appeared across various eras. "Lieutenant Rogers," he called out, his voice tight with tension, "we're receiving distress calls from ourselves. Past and future versions of our ships are appearing throughout history." Rogers' eyes narrowed as she assessed the situation. Then a triumphant grin spread across her face. "Initiate Protocol Hydra," she ordered. "Tell each temporal echo to act independently. We're going to hit the enemy from every point in time simultaneously." As the multidimensional battle unfolded, reality itself began to buckle under the strain. Cracks appeared in the fabric of space-time, threatening to unravel all of history. In 3 different points in time, Jeremy, Tyro, and Miroz realized the gravity of their situation. They needed to find a way to stabilize the time stream and reunite their fractured fleet before it was too late. Jeremy's fingers traced the edge of a yellow document, his eyes widening as he unfolded a hidden section within the Treaty of Sol papers. Faded schematics sprawled across the page, depicting an intricate device labeled Temporal Anchor, Prototype. "Tyro, look at this," Jeremy whispered, spreading the blueprints on a nearby table. "It's some kind of temporal stabilization technology. If we can build this—" Tyro's ears perked up as he studied the designs. "It could be our way home. But how do we construct something this advanced with 22nd century materials?" Jeremy's eyes darted around the room, taking in the various tools and equipment. "We'll have to improvise, start gathering components, anything with quantum entanglement properties." As they worked in secret, scavenging parts from outdated computers and repurposing communication arrays, the negotiations for the Treaty of Sol continued in the adjacent chamber, oblivious to the temporal castaways in their midst. In the distant future, Admiral Miroz crouched behind a fallen pillar, energy blasts sizzling the air above his head. The Architect Vault's defenses hummed to life, holographic sentinels materializing to engage the time-controlling regime's soldiers. "Captain Rogers," Miroz called out, "we need to access the Vault's central controls." Alana nodded, tapping furiously at a wrist-mounted computer. "I'm trying to bypass the security protocols, but—" Her words cut off as a stray shot struck the console she was working on. Sparks erupted and Miroz lunged forward, his hand brushing against an ornate symbol on the wall. The floor beneath them shimmered, and Miroz felt a sickening lurch in his stomach. In an instant, the resistance fighters vanished, each transported to a different point in time. Miroz found himself alone in the vault, alarms blaring as the regime forces breached the outer defenses. Back in the present timeline, Lieutenant Chen watched in horror as writhing metallic organisms latched onto the hulls of their time-manipulating ships. "Sir, the enemies deployed some kind of temporal parasite." Lieutenant Rogers leaned forward, studying the tactical display. The chrono leeches pulsed with stolen energy, draining power from the fleet's time drives. "All ships, initiate temporal fission on my mark," Rogers ordered, his voice steady despite the desperation of their situation. As one, the fleet executed the maneuver. Each vessel split into multiple quantum states, creating a dizzying array of alternate timelines. The chrono leeches, unable to process the sudden influx of temporal energy, began to overload and detach. But the cost was high. Reality itself groaned under the strain of so many fractured timelines. Cracks spiderwebbed across the viewscreen, glimpses of other eras flickering in the fissures. Suddenly, a massive tear ripped open the fabric of space-time. From within the swirling vortex emerged a colossal figure, part machine, part flesh, its very presence warping history around it. As the fractured fleet engaged the time-altering behemoth, Jeremy and Tyro raced against the clock in the past, assembling their makeshift temporal anchor from outdated components. In the far future, Miroz frantically searched for a way to reunite his scattered team, acutely aware that every moment brought the Time Titan closer to unraveling all of history. Jeremy's fingers flew across the makeshift control panel, his brow furrowed in concentration. Tyro watched anxiously, his tail swishing back and forth as the cobbled-together temporal anchor hummed to life. Come on," Jeremy muttered, adjusting a series of dials. The device sputtered, then stabilized, projecting a shimmering bubble around them. "We're in!" Tyro's ears perked up. "It worked?" "Looks like it. Now let's see if we can reach the others." Jeremy tapped at a holographic interface, cycling through various frequencies. Suddenly, a garbled transmission cut through the static. "Anyone, this is Lieutenant Chen under heavy fire." "Chen!" Jeremy exclaimed. "We're picking up temporal signatures from the fleet. Each ship has a unique chronological fingerprint." Tyro leaned in, studying the data. "These signatures, they're fluctuating wildly." Jeremy nodded, his eyes gleaming with sudden inspiration. "That's it. We can use these signatures to our advantage. Listen up, everyone," he broadcast across the temporal bubble. "I need you to arrange your ships in a specific pattern." Meanwhile, in a distant future, Admiral Miroz stumbled through the ruins of an abandoned Caitian outpost. Dust swirled around his feet as he pushed aside debris, searching for anything useful. His hand brushed against something smooth and metallic. Clearing away the rubble, Miroz uncovered a strange device. Its surface pulsed with an otherworldly light, and a holographic display flickered to life. "A chrono compass," Miroz breathed, recognizing the experimental technology. He activated the device, watching as it projected a three-dimensional map of space-time. Glowing dots represented individuals lost in the temporal chaos. "Hold on, everyone," Miroz muttered. "I'm coming for you." Back in the present timeline, Admiral Miroz's voice crackled over the comms. "All ships implement Jeremy's time-weave strategy. Form up in the following configuration." Lieutenant Chen watched in awe as the fleet rearranged itself. Ships from different temporal echoes moved into position, their time fields interlocking in a complex, three-dimensional pattern. The Time Titan loomed before them, its massive form distorting reality. It lashed out with tendrils of chrono energy, attempting to rewrite history. But as the attacks struck the time weave, they dissipated harmlessly. "It's working," Chen called out. "The time weave is deflecting its attacks." But their victory was short-lived. Alarms blared across the bridge as the strain began to take its toll. Hull breaches opened on multiple ships, the fabric of space-time itself tearing at the seams. Lieutenant Rogers gripped the arms of her chair, her mind racing. "We need to change tactics," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Instead of deflecting, let's absorb and redirect its energy. Invert the time weave." Chen nodded, relaying the orders. The fleet's formation shifted, the interlocking time fields reversing polarity. As the Time Titan's next attack hit, the ships began to glow with absorbed temporal energy. The battlefield transformed into a swirling maelstrom of time and space. Pockets of different eras manifested and collapsed chaotically. Chen glimpsed dinosaurs roaming past on one view screen, while another showed the death of the sun. In the past, Jeremy and Tyro seized their chance. "Now!" Jeremy shouted, activating the temporal anchor. The prototype Treaty of Sol, encoded with all the information from their past adventures, shot through the time weave. Admiral Miroz received the data packet, his eyes widening as he absorbed the crucial information. But before he could act, a bone-chilling howl filled the comms. The future Zen 427, its biomechanical form twisting in rage, unleashed the Time Titan's ultimate weapon. A cascade of anti-time erupted from the monstrous creation, threatening to unravel the very fabric of the universe. The cascade of anti-time erupted from the Time Titan, threatening to unravel reality itself. Admiral Miroz's eyes widened as he watched the singularity at the heart of the battle begin to expand at an alarming rate. The fleet moved with practiced precision, separating into 3 distinct circles. The inner ring spun clockwise, the middle counterclockwise, and the outer ring clockwise again. As they rotated, shimmering fields of temporal energy began to form between the ships, interlocking and stabilizing the growing singularity. Inside the Time Titan's core, Lieutenant Rogers ducked behind a twisted mass of biomechanical circuitry as energy bolts sizzled past. His team was scattered throughout the chamber, engaged in a firefight with Zen 427's chrono troopers. The air crackled with temporal distortions, making it difficult to track friend from foe. Rogers spotted a central control panel across the room, its surface pulsing with an eerie light. He tapped his wrist communicator. "Cover me. I'm going for the main controls." As his team laid down suppressing fire, Rogers sprinted across the chamber. He slid the last few feet, coming to a stop before the panel. His fingers flew across the alien interface, rewiring connections and bypassing security protocols. Meanwhile, in the past, Jeremy and Tyro huddled behind an overturned desk as their temporal resonance beacons sparked and sputtered. The air around them shimmered and warped, reality itself seeming to twist and fold. "It's overloading," Tyro shouted over the cacophony of collapsing timelines. "We need to get out of here." Jeremy nodded, grabbing the feline alien's arm. "The Cation Embassy, it's just down the street." They burst out of the building, sprinting through a maelstrom of temporal anomalies. Cars from different eras phased in and out of existence around them. Buildings shifted, their architecture changing in the blink of an eye. Tyro's claws scrabbled against the embassy's door as Jeremy input the emergency override code. They tumbled inside just as a wave of temporal energy washed over the street, erasing it from existence. Catching their breath, Jeremy's eyes fell on a set of blueprints spread across a nearby table. "Tyro, look at this," he said, excitement creeping into his voice. "These are early designs for the gravitational stabilizers used in the human arc fleet." Tyro's ears perked up as he studied the schematics. "If we could adapt these, we might be able to create a temporal stabilizer." In the far future, Admiral Miroz stood before a holographic display, the architect AI's avatar hovering beside him. "The anti-time cascade is spreading too quickly," the AI intoned. "We must act now to neutralize it." Miroz nodded grimly. "What do you propose?" "I can generate a time-inverse wave," the AI replied. "It will cancel out the anti-time effect. However, the energy requirements are substantial." Miroz's eyes fell on the pulsing core of the architect vault. He knew what had to be done. "We'll use the vault's power core," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of the decision. "Overload it if necessary." As the AI began the calculations, Miroz watched the vault's systems hum to life. Centuries of accumulated knowledge, technologies beyond imagination, all of it would be lost. But the alternative was unthinkable. The time-inverse wave burst forth, rippling through the timelines. For a moment it seemed to work. The anti-time cascade faltered, its advance slowing. But then reality itself began to fracture. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Miroz watched in disbelief as pockets of alternate realities bled into their timeline. Ships appeared out of nowhere, versions of their own fleet from futures that never were and pasts that never happened. "Sir," a young officer called out, "we're receiving transmissions from ourselves, but they're operating under completely different tactical assumptions." Miroz's mind raced as he assessed the situation. He had to coordinate not just his own fleet, but these temporal doppelgangers as well. Each one believed they were fighting the real battle, each with their own version of history. "Open a channel to all ships," Miroz ordered, "to every version of our fleet across all timelines. We need to work together if we're going to survive this." As Miroz began to outline his plan, the Time Titan loomed before them, its massive form distorting the very fabric of space-time. The battle for reality itself had only just begun. Tyro nodded. "Do it!" Jeremy flipped the switch. The device hummed to life, emitting a soft blue glow. A shimmering bubble of energy expanded from the stabilizer, enveloping them and spreading outward at an astonishing rate. In the present timeline, Lieutenant Chen watched in awe as a portion of the human fleet suddenly vanished from view. "Admiral Miroz, we've lost contact with half our ships." Miroz's eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display. The missing ships hadn't been destroyed. They'd shifted into a parallel dimension. He tapped his communicator. "All phase-shifted vessels, report status." Captain Rena's voice crackled through the comm. "Sir, you won't believe this. The laws of physics, they're different here. We can perform maneuvers that should be impossible." The phase-shifted ships twisted and curved through space, their hulls bending in ways that defied conventional geometry. They struck at the Time Titan from impossible vectors, their weapons finding gaps in its defenses. Inside the Time Titan's core, Lieutenant Rogers accessed its quantum processor. His fingers flew across the alien interface as he initiated a daring hack. "Come on, you big ugly bastard," he muttered. "Let me in." Suddenly, Rogers felt a searing pain in his head. The room around him blurred and shifted. He looked down at his hands, watching in horror as lines of code began to flow across his skin. "What's happening to me?" he gasped, feeling his consciousness merge with the Titan's AI. A flood of temporal knowledge poured into his mind, overwhelming his senses. In the far future, Admiral Miroz watched as his time-inverse wave collided with the anti-time cascade. The resulting explosion sent shockwaves of temporal energy rippling across the battlefield. Other ships weren't so lucky. The Valiant, a state-of-the-art cruiser, suddenly reverted to its component parts. Its crew flailed in the vacuum of space, their screams silenced by the void. Xian 427, seizing the chaos, activated the Time Titan's ultimate weapon. A beam of sickly green energy lanced out, tearing through the fabric of space-time itself. Entire sections of the timeline began to unravel, erasing swaths of history. Admiral Miroz knew there was only one option left. He opened a fleet-wide channel. "All ships implement Contingency Omega. I repeat, Contingency Omega is now in effect." Across the fleet, advanced quantum computers hummed to life. In a blinding flash, every ship and crew member split into two identical copies. One set remained to continue the battle, while the other vanished, sent back to critical moments in history. Miroz watched as half his fleet disappeared, entrusting them with the monumental task of preserving the timeline. He turned his attention back to the battle at hand, knowing that the fate of all reality now hung in the balance. As Contingency Omega unfolded, the fabric of space-time fractured into a kaleidoscope of temporal echoes. Admiral Miroz watched from the bridge, as half his fleet vanished, their mission now stretching across the annals of history. In the past, a cloaked vessel materialized above Earth during the first contact between humans and Caitians. Captain Lan peered at the viewscreen, observing the delicate negotiations unfolding in a conference room below. "We need to ensure this alliance forms," Lan said, turning to his crew. "Our entire timeline depends on it." His tactical officer nodded, fingers flying across a console. "Initiating subtle communication interference, now." On Earth, a Caitian diplomat's universal translator glitched for a split second. The human representative, quick to offer assistance, created a moment of trust that would ultimately lead to the secret fleet's creation. Elsewhere in time, Commander Chen's ship appeared at the moment of the cosmic anomaly's detection. Her team worked tirelessly, enhancing Earth's early warning systems without revealing their presence. "Careful with those sensor modifications," Chen warned her engineer. "We can't let them detect us." The engineer grunted in acknowledgement, sweat beading on his forehead as he delicately rewired alien circuitry. Back in the present battle, the phase-shifted Mobius squadron prepared for an unprecedented maneuver. Captain Rena's voice crackled over the comms. The fleet twisted and folded, their hulls stretching and warping in ways that defied conventional physics. As they completed the maneuver, Rena found herself staring at the interior of her own ship from the outside. "Klein bottle formation complete," her navigator announced, voice tinged with awe. "We're inside out." The squadron surged forward, bypassing the Time Titan's outer defenses and striking at its core. Within that core, Lieutenant Rogers fought a losing battle against the encroaching AI. Lines of code flowed across his skin, his consciousness fragmenting across the Titan's vast neural network. Through the haze of data, Rogers spotted an anomaly, a hidden subroutine buried deep within the Titan's code. He reached out with his mind, grasping at the digital thread. "Her kill switch," he gasped, understanding flooding his fractured psyche. "Zen 427's failsafe." Rogers threw himself into a mental battle, fighting to access and activate the kill switch. His consciousness stretched to its limits, grappling with the Titan's defenses. In the far future, Admiral Miroz and his team raced through the crumbling architect vault. Temporal instability spread in their wake, reality itself unraveling around them. "There!" Miroz shouted, pointing at a massive device covered in alien sigils. "The terraformer!" His chief engineer rushed to the controls, hands shaking as he input new parameters, reconfiguring for temporal manipulation. "It's working!" The device hummed to life, projecting a shimmering field that pushed back against the encroaching chaos. Bubbles of stable time began to form, expanding and colliding to create a complex temporal landscape. Miroz watched as ships from different eras navigated this new battlefield. Some were caught in rapids of accelerated time, their crews aging years in seconds. Others found themselves trapped in whirlpools of slowed time, weapons fire crawling through space at a snail's pace. A proximity alarm blared, and Miroz turned to see a temporal cliff rushing towards them, a point where time itself seemed to end. "Evasive maneuvers," he barked, gripping his chair as reality twisted around them. Admiral Miroz's eyes widened as he spotted a glaring weakness in their defenses. The time-shifted vessels were losing cohesion, their forms flickering in and out of reality. "Implement protocol quantum entanglement," Miroz barked. "Now." His officers sprang into action, fingers dancing across control panels. A web of shimmering energy threads stretched between ships across different time periods. As the connections solidified, Miroz felt a surge of relief. "Sir, quantum tethers established," reported his communications officer. "We have instantaneous links across all temporal fragments." Miroz nodded, watching as data and resources flowed freely between vessels separated by centuries. A cruiser from the far future beamed advanced shield generators to a frigate in the distant past. The frigate, in turn, sent valuable historical data back to its future counterpart. In the present, the Mobius squadron pressed their advantage. Their Klein bottle formation twisted reality around the Time Titan's core, fractures spreading across its surface. Inside the Titan, Zen 427 snarled in frustration. "Initiate temporal fission!" The massive construct shuddered, then began to split apart. Smaller units broke free, burrowing through space-time like voracious worms. They left trails of distorted reality in their wake, timelines twisting and fraying. Lieutenant Rogers screamed as his consciousness shattered. He found himself existing simultaneously across multiple points in the battle. In one fragment, he raced through pulsing corridors of data. In another, he grappled with the Titan's defenses in the physical world. "Have to find the kill switch," Rogers gasped, his splintered mind straining to focus. Each version of Rogers fought desperately, searching for the hidden failsafe as the AI threatened to consume him entirely. Meanwhile, Jeremy and Tyro's temporal bubble collided violently with a pocket of anti-time. The resulting explosion hurled them through time and space. They materialized in a cavernous hangar, surrounded by half-constructed ships. Jeremy's eyes widened as he recognized the secret human fleet in its infancy. "Tyro," he whispered, "we can change everything." The alien nodded, understanding the opportunity before them. They moved quickly, accessing computer terminals and engineering stations. With subtle adjustments and carefully placed suggestions, they began to enhance the fleet's capabilities. Jeremy's fingers flew across a keypad, upgrading the gravitational stabilizers. Tyro used his alien physiology to access tight spaces, rewiring power conduits for greater efficiency. In the far future, Admiral Miroz stared at the wall of pure chronon particles blocking their path. The terraformer hummed beside him, its purpose about to change dramatically. "Reconfigure for chronon collision," Miroz ordered, his voice steady despite the weight of his decision. As his team worked feverishly to modify the device, Miroz gazed at the shimmering barrier. Beyond it lay the space outside of time itself, and perhaps the key to ending this war once and for all. The modified terraformer powered up, its energy building to unprecedented levels. Miroz braced himself as reality itself seemed to hold its breath. "Collision in 3, 2, 1. A blinding flash erupted as the device struck the chronon wall. For a moment nothing happened. Then, with a sound like reality itself tearing apart, a hole opened in the fabric of time. The chronon collider erupted with blinding energy, tearing a hole in the fabric of space-time. Waves of temporal force radiated outward, warping and reshaping the battlefield. Admiral Miroz's eyes narrowed as he assessed the chaotic timescape before him. "Initiate Operation Temporal Slingshot," Miroz commanded, his voice steady despite the reality-bending forces swirling around the ship. Across different eras, quantum-entangled vessels responded instantly. They stretched and contorted, forming an intricate web that spanned centuries. As chronon waves passed through this temporal net, they coalesced into swirling vortices of pure time. "Sir, temporal whirlpools forming," reported Miroz's science officer. "We're detecting stable wormhole connections across multiple time periods." Miroz nodded. "All ships prepare for temporal jumps. Use the whirlpools as launch points." The fleet surged into action. Vessels dove into the shimmering vortices, vanishing in flashes of light only to reappear at precise moments throughout the battle's timeline. A cruiser from the far future materialized to provide critical fire support during the conflict's opening moments. A scout ship jumped backward, gathering intelligence on the Time Titan's initial deployment. Meanwhile, the fragmented remains of the Time Titan burrowed through the time stream like voracious worms. They targeted pivotal moments, attempting to rewrite the battle's outcome in Zen 427's favor. Within the fractured depths of the Time Titan systems, Lieutenant Rogers fought a losing battle against the encroaching AI. His consciousness, splintered across multiple points in time and space, grappled with an onslaught of temporal data. Suddenly, Rogers noticed the chrono-worm's attempts to alter the timeline. "Wait," he murmured, a plan forming in his fragmented mind. "I can use this." Rogers focused his scattered awareness, reaching out to infect the chrono worms with fragments of his own memories. Combat data, tactical assessments, and crucial intelligence began to flow through the corrupted units. Across the timescape, human ships received unexpected transmissions. "This is impossible," a communications officer gasped. "We're getting tactical data from ourselves, from different points in time." In a hidden shipyard deep in the asteroid belt, Jeremy and Tyro raced against time. They moved with practiced efficiency, installing the final components of their secret weapon. "Temporal resonance drive is in place," Jeremy announced, wiping sweat from his brow. "Once it's exposed to the battle's temporal frequency, it'll activate automatically." Tyro nodded, his alien features set with concentration. "Let's hope it's enough to turn the tide." As the future battle reached its crescendo, the dormant drives across the human fleet suddenly flared to life. Ships experienced instantaneous upgrades, their systems evolving centuries beyond their original specs. "What's happening?" a young ensign cried as his console transformed before his eyes. His captain grinned. "Looks like our past selves left us a little surprise. Bring all new systems online. Let's show these bastards what humanity can do." Back in the present, Admiral Miros studied the swirling chaos of the battlefield. His eyes darted from point to point, tracking temporal eddies and vortices. Slowly, a pattern emerged from the madness. "Mobius Squadron," Miros commanded. "Execute Protocol Chrono Surf, ride the waves of unstable time." The twisted ships of the Mobius Squadron responded instantly. They dove and weaved through the shifting temporal landscape, using the currents of unstable time to outmaneuver their opponents. As they surfed these waves, they began to anticipate shifts in the battlefield, gaining a crucial tactical edge. "Sir?" Captain Rena's voice crackled over the comms. "We've spotted a vulnerability in the chrono worm deployment. If we coordinate our efforts, we can herd them into a temporal bottleneck." Miros nodded, a predatory grin spreading across his face. "Excellent work, Captain. All ships prepare to execute containment maneuvers. It's time we ended this once and for all." The human fleet moved with precision, their newly enhanced systems allowing them to navigate the treacherous timescape with ease. Slowly but surely, they began to corral the chrono worms, driving them towards a narrow point in the temporal stream. The massive human fleet shifted into position, encircling the temporal bottleneck. Admiral Miros's voice rang out across the comms, steady and unwavering. "All ships, initiate Operation Temporal Fusion. Deploy exotic matter tethers and prepare for synchronized rotation." Shimmering tendrils of bluish-white energy erupted from each vessel, weaving together into an intricate web. The entire formation began to spin, slowly at first, then with increasing speed. Space itself seemed to warp and twist around the rotating sphere of ships. Inside the Time Titan's fragmented systems, Lieutenant Rogers felt a shift. The chrono worms, once his enemies, now offered an unexpected lifeline. He reached out with his fractured consciousness, grasping at the temporal tunnels they created. Bit by bit, fragments of his mind coalesced. With each piece that fell into place, Rogers gained deeper access to the Time Titan's core processes. Streams of data flooded his awareness, revealing the AI's most closely guarded secrets. In the far future, Admiral Miros stood transfixed as the Chronon Collider tore through reality itself. The barrier shattered, revealing a realm beyond imagination. Vast islands of frozen time drifted through an infinite void, each one a perfect snapshot of history. "Incredible," Miros breathed, his eyes wide. "Navigator, can we enter safely?" His chief science officer nodded, fingers flying across a console. "I'm recalibrating our temporal shielding now, sir. We should be able to traverse this space without becoming trapped in the time bubbles." As Miros's ship glided into the extra-dimensional expanse, he turned to his communications officer. "Signal the fleet. This could be the key to unraveling Zen 427's entire plan." Back in the asteroid belt of Earth's past, Jeremy and Tyro worked feverishly to complete their upgrades to the human fleet. Suddenly, the ships around them hummed to life, their systems pulsing with energy. Tyro's alien features contorted in what might have been awe. The temporal resonance drives, they're linking with future versions of themselves. It's creating a feedback loop. The two watched as the fleet transformed. Hull plating shifted and rippled, forming new geometries that defied conventional physics. Weapon systems merged with propulsion, creating hybrid technologies capable of manipulating the very fabric of spacetime. At the heart of the battle, Admiral Miroz's eyes narrowed as his sensors detected a massive surge of temporal energy. The singularity at the center of their formation pulsed and writhed, growing more unstable by the second. "Sir?" his science officer called out, voice tinged with fear. "The chronoworms and time titan fragments, they're merging into something new, something alive." Miroz watched in stunned silence as a swirling vortex of pure temporal energy coalesced before them. It pulsed with awareness, its very existence a threat to the continuity of time itself. "By the stars," Miroz whispered, "what have we created?" The sentient time vortex expanded, tendrils of chronal energy reaching out across the battlefield. With each passing moment, it grew more powerful, more aware. Miroz realized with growing dread that they now faced an entity capable of rewriting the entire history of the universe. Admiral Miroz's eyes narrowed as he assessed the swirling vortex of temporal energy before him. The entity pulsed with an otherworldly awareness, threatening to unravel the very fabric of time. Miroz's voice cut through the tension on the bridge. The fleet responded with precision. Ships maneuvered into a complex three-dimensional grid formation around the vortex. Quantum filaments extended from each vessel, weaving an intricate web of glowing strands. "Temporal tethers engaged, sir," reported the science officer. "We're beginning to stabilize the chaotic time streams." The vortex writhed and twisted, fighting against the constraints of the quantum web. Miroz watched as localized areas of temporal distortion began to smooth out. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Rogers blinked, his consciousness fully reintegrated after the harrowing battle within the Time Titan's systems. As he regained his bearings, he felt an inexplicable pull towards the vortex. I think I can interface with it," Rogers muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. Before anyone could stop him, Rogers closed his eyes and reached out with his mind. The world around him faded away as he plunged into the swirling maelstrom of temporal energy. Rogers found himself suspended in a sea of shifting timelines and fractured realities. Information flooded his senses, past, present, and future intertwining in a dizzying dance. He struggled to maintain his sense of self amidst the chaos. "Focus," he told himself, gritting his teeth. "You're the bridge, order and chaos. Find the balance." In the extra-dimensional space beyond the chronon barrier, Admiral Miroz and his team stared in awe at the crystalline entities that floated before them. These beings pulsed with an otherworldly light, their very existence seeming to maintain the flow of causality itself. One of the entities approached Miroz's ship, its crystalline surface rippling with complex patterns. A voice resonated in the minds of the crew, bypassing spoken language entirely. "The time stream is in peril. We grant you the power to shape its course." Miroz felt a surge of energy course through his vessel. The ship's systems came alive with new possibilities, displaying capabilities that defied conventional physics. "Chrono-sculpting protocols online, Admiral," his chief engineer reported, voice filled with wonder. "We can physically manipulate temporal flows now." Back in Earth's past, Jeremy and Tyro watched in astonishment as the fleet they had worked so hard to upgrade underwent yet another transformation. Each ship seemed to blur, its outline becoming indistinct. "What's happening?" Jeremy asked, his eyes wide. Tyro's alien features contorted in concentration. Temporal fission, they're splitting into multiple versions of themselves from different points in their own timelines. The hangar filled with a cacophony of sounds as ships multiplied exponentially. Jeremy saw craft in various stages of construction suddenly appear fully formed, while others seemed to age decades in an instant. "This is incredible," Jeremy breathed. "We've just increased our fleet's size and capabilities beyond anything we could have imagined." At the heart of the battle, Admiral Miroz's sensors detected a new phenomenon emanating from the time vortex. Complex patterns of energy pulsed outward, carrying information too intricate for conventional systems to decipher. Miroz's eyes widened as realization dawned. Those aren't just energy patterns, they're algorithms, the underlying code of reality itself. He turned to his communications officer. All ships enter Omega configuration immediately. The fleet responded instantly. Each vessel's form began to shift and twist, internal systems reconfiguring at the quantum level. Within moments, the entire armada had transformed into a vast network of living quantum processors. "Sir," his science officer called out, "we're detecting localized reality bubbles forming across the battlefield. Each one seems to operate under different laws of physics." Miroz watched as ships adapted on the fly, their forms shifting to match the wildly changing conditions around them. In one area, vessels elongated to impossible proportions as they traversed a region of warped space. In another, ships phased in and out of existence, using quantum uncertainty as both weapon and shield. Admiral Miroz's eyes widened as he stared at the readouts flooding his command console. The Omega configuration, their greatest weapon against the temporal chaos, was on the verge of catastrophic failure. "Sir, the quantum processors are overloading," his chief engineer reported, fingers flying across holographic displays. "We are generating temporal energy faster than we can contain it." Miroz's mind raced, calculating possibilities. "Initiate Operation Kronos Sync," he ordered, his voice steady despite the urgency. "Convert Beta Squadron into temporal energy absorbers." Across the battlefield, a third of the fleet began to transform. Hull plating rippled and reconfigured, forming intricate patterns of quantum circuitry. As the excess energy flowed into these ships, their hulls began to glow with an otherworldly light. "Energy siphon successful," the science officer announced. "Kronos Sync ships operating at 78% capacity and climbing." Inside the swirling vortex of temporal energy, Lieutenant Rogers fought to maintain his sense of self. Streams of data flowed through his consciousness, each one a fragment of time itself. Suddenly, a pattern emerged from the chaos, a hidden subroutine buried deep within the algorithms. Rogers focused, diving deeper into the code. His eyes snapped open as realization struck. "It's a backdoor," he whispered. "Zen 427 built a way to control reality itself." Without hesitation, Rogers began to rewrite the code. His fingers flew across an invisible keyboard, manipulating the very fabric of space-time. "Come on," he muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. "Just a little more time?" In the crystalline realm beyond conventional space, Admiral Miroz and his team worked feverishly. Using their newly granted chrono-sculpting abilities, they wove intricate webs of causality around the battle. "Temporal Dam 7 is holding," Miroz's second-in-command reported. "We've successfully redirected the time stream away from the Arcturan cluster." As they worked, shimmering archways appeared around them. Miroz stepped through one, finding himself in a vast library of swirling energy. "These are temporal archives," he breathed, reaching out to touch a pulsing strand of light. Images flooded his mind, the birth of stars, the rise and fall of civilizations, and at the heart of it all a primordial force of creation and destruction. "The anomaly," Miroz whispered. "It's as old as time itself." Back in Earth's past, the temporally fissioned fleet underwent a startling transformation. Multiple versions of each ship, scattered across millennia, began to resonate with one another. Quantum entanglement spread like wildfire, linking past, present, and future into a single, vast consciousness. Captain Rena gasped as her mind expanded, suddenly aware of every iteration of herself across time. "We're connected," she said, her voice filled with awe. "I can see probability itself." With a thought, Rena nudged a stray asteroid in the distant past. The ripple effect cascaded through time, subtly altering the course of the battle in their favor. At the edge of the conflict, the chronosync ships reached their limit. Energy crackled across their hulls as internal systems strained to contain the temporal power. Then, one by one, they began to implode. But instead of destruction, each implosion birthed a new universe. Swirling galaxies zoomed into existence, entire cosmic histories playing out in seconds before collapsing back into nothingness. Admiral Miroz watched in awe as these mini-universes blinked in and out of existence around his fleet. Then, a spark of inspiration struck. "Tactical!" he called out. "Prepare to trigger a localized Big Bang at coordinates Delta 7. As the order was carried out, a new universe sprang to life directly in the path of an enemy formation. The sudden explosion of space-time scattered their opponents, creating a temporary safe zone for Miroz's forces. "Incredible," Miroz breathed, watching as reality itself became a weapon in their arsenal. "We're not just fighting across time anymore. We're reshaping the very nature of existence." Admiral Miroz stared at the swirling chaos before him, his mind racing to process the cosmic tapestry unfolding across the battlefield. The constant birth and death of mini-universes created a mesmerizing pattern, a living map of probabilities and possibilities. "It's beautiful," he whispered, then shook his head, snapping back to the urgency of the moment. "Navigation, are you seeing this?" His chief navigator, a tall, multi-limbed alien named Zix, responded with a series of rapid clicks and whistles. The universal translator kicked in. "Affirmative, Admiral. The meta-structure is unlike anything we've ever encountered. Standard navigation protocols are useless." Miroz nodded, his eyes never leaving the cosmic display. "Then we create new ones. I'm designating this phenomenon the probability maze. I want every ship equipped with new navigation systems within the hour. We'll use the maze to our advantage." As the order spread through the fleet, ships began to adapt. Sensors recalibrated, picking up the subtle fluctuations in reality that marked safe passages through the maze. Pilots trained in real time, learning to read the ebb and flow of probability itself. Deep within the time vortex, Lieutenant Rogers fought a battle on a different front. His consciousness, stretched to its limits, grappled with the complex code of Zen 427's backdoor program. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he rewrote line after line, each change sending ripples through the very fabric of reality. "Almost there," he muttered, his fingers dancing across an invisible interface. With a final keystroke, Rogers collapsed, exhausted but triumphant. "It's done." The effects of his work manifested immediately. Across the battlefield, reality began to fracture. Ships found themselves face to face with alternate versions of themselves, some more advanced, others battle-scarred and desperate. Captain Rena of the TSS Defiant gasped as she stared at a mirror image of her vessel. The other Defiant's hull was scorched and pitted, its weapons primed and aimed directly at her. "Evasive maneuvers!" she shouted, but before her crew could respond, the shadow ship opened fire. The Defiant shuddered under the impact, alarms blaring throughout the ship. "Return fire," Rena ordered, her voice steady despite the chaos. "But aim to disable, not destroy. That's still us over there, even if it's from another timeline." In the extra-dimensional space beyond the Chronon barrier, Admiral Miroz and his team pored over the temporal archives. Information from countless eons flooded their minds, each new discovery more astonishing than the last. Miroz rushed over, his eyes widening as he absorbed the information. "The Nexus Forge E," he breathed. "A device capable of reweaving space-time itself. This could be our salvation." Without hesitation, Miroz began issuing orders. "I want teams sent to these coordinates immediately. We need to gather these components from across history. Move fast, people. Time itself is against us." Back in Earth's past, Jeremy and Tyro watched in awe as their upgraded fleet underwent yet another transformation. The quantum entanglement that linked the ships across time deepened, evolving into something new and extraordinary. Tyro's alien features contorted in concentration. "Jeremy, are you seeing this? The fleet emits projecting echoes of itself." Jeremy nodded, his eyes wide with wonder. Temporal echoes, ships existing in multiple time periods simultaneously. He paused, a grin spreading across his face. Oh, this is going to drive the enemy crazy. Across the battlefield, these phantom ships began to appear. Some faded in and out of existence, while others seemed as solid as their present-day counterparts. Enemy forces found themselves surrounded, outmaneuvered by ships that could appear and disappear at will. At the heart of the conflict, the sentient time vortex pulsed with increasing instability. Each throb sent out waves of temporal energy, aging some areas of space by millennia, while others reverted to primordial chaos. Admiral Miroz watched the erratic behavior with growing concern. Then a spark of inspiration struck. "This is it," he muttered, "our chance to turn the tide." He keyed his comm system. "All ships, this is Admiral Miroz. Initiate Protocol Surfer immediately. Reconfigure for chrono surfing operations." Across the fleet, ships began to transform. Hull plating shifted, forming sleek, wave-like patterns. Engines recalibrated to harness the temporal pulses emanating from the vortex. As the newly configured chrono surfers launched, Miroz held his breath. The ships accelerated, timing their movements perfectly with the vortex's pulses. In a blinding flash, they vanished, only to reappear seconds later at different points in the battle's timeline. "It's working," Miroz breathed, watching as his fleet danced through time itself, striking at the enemy from past, present, and future simultaneously. "We are riding the waves of time." The chrono-surfing vessels danced through the erratic pulses of the time vortex, their hull plating gleaming as they rode the waves of temporal energy. Admiral Miroz watched from the bridge of his flagship, his eyes fixed on the swirling chaos before him. A proximity alert chimed, drawing his attention to a nearby console. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, her voice tight with urgency, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Nexus Forge team." Miroz nodded, his fingers tapping a rapid sequence on his command interface. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the haggard face of the team's lead scientist. "Report," Miroz ordered, noting the fear in the scientist's eyes. "Sir, the Nexus Forge, it's shown us something terrible." The scientist's voice quavered as he spoke. "Our actions, the constant manipulation of space-time, we've created an irreparable fracture in the universe's foundation." Miroz felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath as the full magnitude of their actions washed over him. When he opened them again, his gaze was steel. "Initiate Protocol Omega Null," he commanded, his voice barely above a whisper. The bridge fell silent, the crew staring at their admiral in disbelief. Miroz's second-in-command stepped forward, his face pale. "Sir, are you certain? That would mean—" As the order spread through the fleet, ships began to power up their temporal cores. Energy crackled across their hulls as the protocol initialized, preparing to erase the human fleet from history. Deep within the time vortex, Lieutenant Rogers felt the shift. His consciousness, still merged with the swirling currents of temporal energy, perceived the impending erasure. In that moment, he made a choice. With a thought, Rogers redirected the vortex's energy, channeling it into the probability maze. The fabric of reality bent and twisted under his will, creating a pocket universe, a safe haven for a fraction of the fleet. Across the battlefield, ships began to blink out of existence. Jeremy and Tyro, their minds linked across time and space, felt the agonizing sensation of being unmade. Their thoughts scattered, memories unraveling like frayed threads. "Tyro," Jeremy called out, his voice echoing across multiple timelines. "What's happening to us?" "We're being erased," Tyro responded, his alien features contorting in pain. "Our actions, our very existence, it's all unraveling." In the heart of the collapsing battlefield, Zen 427 realized the futility of his grand plan. Panic gripped him as he activated his backdoor program, desperate to escape the cosmic rewrite. But as he slipped between realities, he found himself trapped, a prisoner in the void between worlds. Admiral Miroz watched from the pocket universe as the last remnants of his fleet faded away. The cosmic tapestry unraveled before his eyes, history rewriting itself. The anomaly that had threatened Earth vanished, never having come to pass. The secret fleet, the pride of humanity's ingenuity, ceased to exist. In this new timeline, Earth continued its isolated existence. The galactic treaty remained unbroken, its people forever gazing at the stars they were forbidden to explore. Unaware of the potential they had once realized, humanity wondered about the vast universe beyond their reach. The pocket universe sealed itself off, becoming a hidden monument to what might have been. Within its confines, Admiral Miroz and the survivors of his fleet drifted, guardians of a history that no longer existed. As the last echoes of the old timeline faded, Miroz stared out at the starfield of their new home. His voice barely audible, he spoke to the emptiness around him. "We saved the universe," he said, "but at what cost?" The pocket universe pulsed gently, a tiny bubble of possibility in an ocean of what might have been. Inside, the last remnants of humanity's greatest achievement floated, a hidden epitaph to the fleet that never was. As the pocket universe sealed itself off, a startling transformation began. The concentrated temporal energy within the confined space crystallized, forming an intricate lattice of pure chronons. Admiral Miroz watched in awe as the crystalline structure spread rapidly, engulfing his ship and the surrounding fleet. Before anyone could respond, the crystal lattice reached them. Miroz felt an odd sensation, as if his very atoms were freezing in place. His consciousness remained aware, but he found himself unable to move or speak. The Admiral could only watch as the chronon crystals encased him and every member of his surviving fleet. Time lost all meaning within the crystal prison. Miroz's thoughts drifted, unable to track the passage of days or years. Outside their timeless bubble, centuries flowed by. Earth continued its isolated existence, its people unaware of the alternate history that had been erased. An eternity seemed to pass before something changed. A sleek vessel of unfamiliar design breached the barrier of their pocket universe. As it entered, the chronon crystals began to vibrate, then shatter. Miroz felt himself being pulled free from his crystal cocoon. Relief flooded through him as he regained mobility, but something was wrong. He looked down at his hands, seeing them as translucent, ghostly apparitions. "We're free, but not whole," he said, his voice sounding distant and hollow. Around him, the rest of the fleet materialized as spectral forms. Ships and crew alike were visible but insubstantial, trapped between realities. The alien vessel that had breached their sanctuary settled on the pocket universe's surface. Its hatch opened, revealing a feline-like being with pointed ears and a sleek coat of fur. The Caitian explorer stepped out, eyes wide with wonder, as he took in the ghostly fleet before him. Miroz attempted to approach the alien, but found himself unable to move beyond a certain point. He watched helplessly as the Caitian made its way to the nearest ship, phasing through the spectral hull with ease. Inside, the explorer discovered the ship's logs. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing scenes from the erased timeline. The Caitian watched in fascination as the story of humanity's secret fleet unfolded before him. Hours passed as the explorer pored over the logs, learning of the threat to Earth, the ingenuity of the human response, and the ultimate sacrifice made to save the universe. When he emerged from the ship, his eyes were filled with a mix of awe and sorrow. Miroz stood before him, unable to communicate but silently willing the Caitian to understand the importance of what he had discovered. The explorer looked directly at Miroz, as if sensing his presence. He spoke, his words unintelligible to the spectral admiral, but the tone conveyed a deep respect and gratitude. As the Caitian prepared to leave, Miroz and his crew watched with a mixture of hope and resignation. Their story would not be forgotten, but they remained trapped, unable to rejoin the universe they had saved. Months passed in the outside world. The tale of the human fleet spread across the galaxy, captivating the imaginations of countless species. The story of sacrifice and ingenuity inspired a new wave of scientific exploration and cooperation. Miroz stood on the bridge of his spectral flagship, gazing out at the stars beyond their bubble of reality. A massive fleet of ships representing dozens of species assembled, preparing for a journey of exploration unlike any before. As the united armada began to move, Miroz placed his ghostly hand against the viewscreen. He couldn't touch the physical world, but he could feel the weight of the legacy they had created. The future they had fought for was unfolding before them, even if they could never truly be a part of it. As the United Galactic Fleet ventured deeper into uncharted space, Admiral Miroz observed their progress from within the pocket universe. His spectral form hovered near the viewscreen, watching as ships of various alien designs moved in perfect formation. Pride swelled within him, knowing that their sacrifice had paved the way for this unprecedented cooperation. Suddenly a flicker in the chronon lattice caught his attention. Miroz focused, his incorporeal senses stretching across the fabric of spacetime. Something was changing, subtly at first, but with increasing intensity. "Lieutenant," he called out, his voice echoing strangely in the crystalline environment. "Run a full-spectrum analysis on the chronon field." The ghostly figure of his subordinate complied, fingers dancing across holographic controls. Data streams flowed around them, coalescing into a three-dimensional model of the pocket universe and beyond. Miroz's eyes widened as he saw the truth. "It's unraveling," he whispered. "Our influence, it's being erased." Across the spectral fleet, crew members reported similar anomalies. Ship logs began to flicker, historical records shifting and changing before their eyes. The legacy they had fought so hard to preserve was vanishing. In that moment of crisis, Miroz made a decision that would alter the course of galactic history. He opened a fleet-wide channel, his voice resonating with purpose. "Attention, all hands," he began, each word heavy with the weight of command. "We face a threat greater than any we've encountered before. Our very existence, our impact on the universe is being undone, but we will not go quietly into oblivion." Miroz paused, looking out at the shimmering chronon lattice that surrounded them. "We have one final mission. We will merge our consciousnesses with the chronon lattice itself. Our knowledge, our experiences, everything that we are, will become one with the fabric of space-time." A murmur of confusion and fear rippled through the fleet. Miroz continued, his voice unwavering. "I know what I'm asking of you, but this is our last chance to preserve our legacy, to ensure that our sacrifice wasn't in vain." With a silent nod to his bridge crew, Miroz initiated the process. The chronon crystals began to pulse with energy, tendrils of temporal force reaching out to embrace the spectral forms of the fleet. As the merger began, Miroz felt his consciousness expanding, blending with those of his crew. Their combined experiences flowed through the lattice, spreading out across the cosmos like ripples in a vast cosmic ocean. The United Galactic Fleet, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the hidden pocket universe, continued its journey. Yet as they traveled, crew members began to experience strange phenomena. Flashes of insight, inexplicable bursts of inspiration, and vivid dreams of advanced technologies plagued their waking and sleeping hours. On Earth, a young scientist jolted awake, her mind buzzing with the blueprints for a revolutionary propulsion system. In a Cation laboratory, researchers found themselves drawn to explore temporal mechanics with a fervor that bordered on obsession. As the Phantom Fleet's knowledge dispersed, it acted as a catalyst for rapid technological advancement across the galaxy. New alliances formed and old tensions reignited as species raced to harness these sudden leaps in understanding. Earth, long constrained by the Galactic Treaty, felt the whispers of possibility more strongly than most. In secret facilities across the planet, engineers and scientists worked tirelessly, driven by an inexplicable urgency to reach the stars. The day Earth broke the treaty sent shockwaves through the galactic community. A massive armada of ships, far more advanced than anyone had thought possible, emerged from hidden shipyards. The human ambassador's declaration was succinct. "We will no longer be contained." As Earth expanded aggressively into space, Other species scrambled to catch up. The Caitians, their natural curiosity amplified by the phantom whispers, made terrifying breakthroughs in temporal weapon technology. Tensions escalated rapidly. Diplomatic channels, once bustling with cooperation, now crackled with threats and ultimatums. The galaxy teetered on the brink of a conflict unlike any in recorded history. In the vast emptiness of space, a lone human ship drifted at the edge of a disputed sector. Its captain, hand hovering over the weapons console, was unaware of the profound history that had led to this moment. As targeting systems locked onto a Caitian vessel, the weight of countless sacrifices and unintended consequences hung in the balance. The captain's finger tensed, ready to fire the shot that would ignite a galactic powder keg. In that instant, the legacy of the Phantom Fleet lived on, not as a tale of heroism, but as an invisible force driving the cosmos towards an uncertain and potentially devastating future. If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.